Could I ask those online if you would please turn your cameras on? Thank you. Okay, fellow directors, we are now live. Good morning. I'm just waiting for a few people to. Good morning. And somebody seems to have a microphone on. I think it might be you.
I count 8. I count 8. Director Morrison just what's the call? Oh, 9. Where's the SOS?
Try it again. That sounds great, Amanda. Thank you. Sorry, folks online. We're just waiting for Rob's here. Director Morrison's coming in. Okay, we have quorum. Good morning, fellow directors. This is the Wednesday, May 7th meeting of the Governance Committee meeting, and I acknowledge that our fellow directors from North Cowichan have a demanding day today, so they are reporting online. I'd like to start by acknowledging that I'd like to recognize that the CBRD is on the unceded territories of the Quw'utsun, Malahat, Sibassett, Halalt, Penelakut, Sinamis, the Axan, Pakwachin, Didadat, and Pachidat nations, whose people have walked gently here for thousands of years. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda for the Governance Committee meetings? Moved by Director Scal, seconded by Director Eustache. All in favor? Carried. I would look for a motion to adopt the minutes of the Governance Committee meeting of April 2nd, 2025. Moved by Director Beeston, seconded by Director Douglas. All in favor? Motion carried. There does not seem to be any business arising from the minutes. I don't see anybody in the gallery or online who wish to provide public input. No delegations, no correspondence, information or reports, leading us to report number R1, report from the Legislative Services Division correspondence. I'll turn to Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair. We have Ms. Boyd online to talk to the report at R1 today.
Good morning, directors. I'm actually on Salt Spring Island, where there are many First Nations, all whom have long-standing relationships with the land and the waters from time immemorial, and continues to have, of the Capital Regional District. So before you is the correspondence policy draft. We received this board direction on March 26, 2025. It's timely in a sense that we've had a lot of staff turnover, and we've had done board practice, we have past practice correspondence handling, but with, again, the turnover of staff, I think something in writing gives us some direction. A correspondence policy provides consistency and transparency, improved efficiencies. Of course, there's legal and compliance standards that we need to abide by. It shows accountability, it provides open engagement with the public, and it gives some guidelines on professionalism as well, and receiving that both way correspondence, giving and receiving. I look at policies when I draft them. There's administrative policies as well as board policies. Administrative policies are normally held in-house and mostly managed by staff and the senior management team. And then, of course, board policies pertain to the board and affects the board and probably the public as well. This policy I've come across is kind of a bit of both, actually. So I've kind of narrowed it down to what the directors kind of need to focus on here. Receiving correspondence, it comes in many different forms. It could be written on a napkin, to your email, to even just, received in many different ways. But when you receive, some directors receive an email and some don't. And it's It's our, just as legislative service, it's our responsibility to ensure all directors receive equal information. And so if only some receive it, we would like to see that correspondence, ensure that everybody does receive it. And that's where the board information package comes in play. We also have the legislative side of things that may pertain to a public hearing or Section 464 that they're not allowed to provide any input. We need those to be directed over to Development Services to ensure we're abiding by legislation. So in the report, I just kind of narrowed it down a bit. So if you receive some correspondence addressed to board, I'm not handling everybody's inboxes, but it's a board correspondence. And if it's part of planning or a legislative process, we're asking if it could be sent to legislative service to be channeled accordingly and provided to everybody accordingly or not. And then as well, anything else regarding a agenda item. So as an example, we publish on sometimes Thursday or Friday afternoons an agenda, and people see the agenda over the weekend and they want to provide input on that. Of course, very welcome. And we'll receive that we will collect that correspondence up until the noon the day prior, and we can include that pertaining to the agenda item that were being held that week. If that agenda item's been dealt with last week and we receive more correspondence, it's only fair to respond, of course, to those people as well, acknowledge them, and include it in the board information package so that board received all the information. Where there's many scenarios that we can think of that where it needs to channel and who needs to receive it or not receive it for that matter. But we will, if we could, get the correspondence policy in play, and then we can make things happen and see how it works and flows. And of course, the policy is much easier to amend than a bylaw. We can always bring back and for your consideration to some amendments and make sure the processes are smoothed out. And any questions on that?
Well, before I turn to questions, I'd like to commend you, Ms. Boyd, on wading through this and coming up with such a clear, concise map for us to follow. And for some relative newcomers, it is kind of a mystery what happens when people approach you. And so thank you for this map. And I'm going to turn to Director Morrison, who has either a comment or a question. But I have a question. How do I do this? Do I touch the person on the screen? You're on.
Red is go. Thank you, Ms. Boyd. So I read all this material and it did raise a couple of questions for me. And probably the most important one that I'll start with, I'll stick to two if I may, Mr. Chair, is if we have a resident that is, or a group, and their goal is to put something before the board. And, you know, we've often had individuals send us correspondence and then arrive here and then read their correspondence to us, and most of us have read it. So I'm wanting to ask if you feel that the policy for someone that is wanting to ensure that their thoughts and concerns and input are going to be on the record, that the policy is going to ensure that that happens. So if someone asked, how do I make sure that my comments get to the board and are part of the record, we simply say, please write addressed to the board for consideration at a meet. How would we be directing our residents?
I think that is exactly what needs to be done, in the sense that it be heard and on the record. Most correspondence just comes in, dear board, it could be operational, it could be pertaining to an item, and I've got a complaint and such, where it could be handled. But if they want it on the record and it's stated, for sure, I think it could be included as a correspondence item on the agenda. Any correspondence that goes into the board information package, we've kind of been doing that on Fridays afternoon, our legislative assistant there, she sends it out kindly in the afternoons on Fridays, and it does state that if there's anything in that board information package, the director is more than welcome to take that out of there, and we can bring it onto an agenda item for just further discussion. So, yeah, I think if it's stating on the record and they want that on there, I don't see an issue with that.
And Director Morrison, you had a second query?
Second question, yes. So in regards to, I note that you've noted the sort of different levels of recipients of correspondence, and I'm speaking generally of emails. It can be directed to an individual director. It could be directed to a group of directors that are either geographically located, or it could be to the electoral area services. My question is, and I saw some language in here about may, not the word must, but it's been my practice to only respond to correspondence addressed to me only. And that if there are other individuals that are named and are in the address line, that it's going to be picked up and addressed by the board chair or the appropriate subject matter expert on staff. Is there some clarity within this policy that gives us guidance as to when it's appropriate for us to be responding to something other than board or something other than electoral area services?
If as an unwritten rule, I don't think I've included something like that in the policy itself. I don't think we as staff need to manage each individual's director's inbox. If it's addressed to you, I think it would be appropriate for you to respond. However, if other directors are included in on that, out of equal fairness to the rest of the directors who never received that email, it could be included, a CC with the legislative services, and we'd recognize that it probably could be good to have on the board information package circulated for information, and just to keep that equality throughout the board of directors. But yeah, if it's addressed to board and only a few receive it, then definitely I believe it should be circulated to all of the board. If it's addressed to individual director with a few others, then yeah, by all means, if it's individually addressed to yourself or to a director, for sure respond. Again, not managing everybody's inboxes. I think we take that discretion, or if we want to embed something in the policy, I can come back with that if you like.
Mr. Chair?
Who's asked? Oh, our CAO would.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to add to the discussion in Ms. Boyd's comments, in Section 7, it speaks to response and communication. So it mentions in the current draft that if the author has sent the correspondence to one or more directors with a request or question within, it should be forwarded to Legislative Services email for acknowledgement and proper routing. And so I think the director might be posing when it's just directed to an individual director, it says one or more. So I'm thinking potentially there could be some massaging of that wording, that there's certain criteria that would suggest that the item is more relevant to the full body and not very specific, for instance, to the local area community or something to that effect. But maybe we could work that wording around a little bit.
Thank you, Ms. Miles Wilson. Are you satisfied, Director Morrison? Turn to our Director Segal.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to housekeeping. Notice that our mics are not set up to get into a queue. It's just we turn on our mics. It's not our usual setup. I want to ask you, how would you like us to do it? Leave our microphones on, or revert back to the old hand-up model?
How about we use the hand-up model? Is there a bit of a technical glitch this morning? Is that what you're?
I think it's just set up.
Just needs to be turned on.
Yeah.
Okay, for at present, we'll stick with, and I see that Director Wilson has his hand up. So
I think
what?
Director Nicholson had her hand up.
Oh, I have to look around the whole room? Well, now how does Director Wilson?
Pick one.
So you get to mix
I get
them
to
in if you
choose
like,
Director
yeah.
Wilson.
Okay, so I still do have an actual question though.
Oh, sorry, Director Wilson, stand by.
Okay, so through to Ms. Boyd. Thank you so much for this policy. I'm really looking forward to having a consistent approach to all the correspondence we receive. So in your little, the table in number 6, where it says matters that require action from the board or by way of resolution to a committee, that would be added to the correspondence section. So I guess I'm wondering if correspondence that's like public input, does it fall into this category? And will that go into our board information package and show up on the correspondence section? Or will it just show up on the agenda?
Thank you, Director Segal, Chair Segal. Well, we don't want to duplicate our work, right? So matters that come written in require action from the board or the committee by way of resolution or to the committee. Could be provided under public input if it's pertaining to an agenda item, or general course under the correspondence section. Again, we don't know what everybody's going to write in the future, and it's kind of that figuring out where it needs to go placed on the agenda. And then it's dealt with at the committee or the board agenda. Does that help a little? If it's received, so if it's pertaining to an item on the agenda coming forward, it would be included in on that, not in the board information package on Friday afternoon. We'd collect all those together.
Thank you, Allison, or Ms. Boyd. Director Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As far as I know, the collective group or group address for board and EAD is not accessible to the general public. They get it, it doesn't go to everybody. And the general public, as far as I know, and I've tested this from my Gmail address, has to individually address each director. Is that still the case, or has that been rectified?
I'm not sure. I haven't tested it, but I believe I've seen correspondence which some directors' full email is on it, and some are not included. And so for equal transparency, we just include that information sometimes on the agenda. But Danielle's there. There we go.
Ms. Miles-Wills.
Yeah, so the current board distribution list is not readily available to the public for a variety of reasons, including the fact that we were getting a lot of somewhat spam to the address. But we are, through this policy, trying to emphasize a routing through legislative services so that we can record receipt and respond to the recipient as well. And so this is an effort to try to track that correspondence more effectively. If it goes into the board address, it's not really giving us the tools we need to keep track of the correspondence. We do have all of the directors' contact information listed on the website, and so any individual obviously can get a hold of the board collectively, but that address is not currently functional as a distribution list.
Okay, lovely. And so basically, if somebody contacts me, the advice is to send it to legislative services and each individual director on the list there, as opposed to using that board, trying to use that board or EAD address, right?
I think for efficiency, because I think a lot of us are overwhelmed by email. I would, as we all know, it's really taken off in the last decade, and it can be quite unmanageable. So I would propose that it could be just distributed to legislative services. They will track it, record it, respond to the person, and then distribute it accordingly.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miles-Wilson. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I have several questions.
Fire away.
And so my first question is just about clarification. We were talking about things that come directly to us personally. So what I do now, and I think this is okay from what I've heard, if I have a question, like we had a lot of questions about the garbage 3-stream thing, some of that, if I couldn't answer it, I would pass it directly to staff to deal with. If it's a board issue, I send it to legislative services, and I often ask community members to put it into a format that it could be shared with the board. And that would be.
Yes, that's correct.
Your microphone turned off.
Sorry, I didn't hear that last part. Is it to me?
Okay, technical issues, I'm back.
Yes, that sounds correct. Yeah.
And so then if there is an issue like short-term rentals, which is sort of being discussed right now, if it's something that I think the board should hear, I get them to send a note to the whole board. Yeah, so is that about right?
If it comes into you and you'd like it to share it with the rest of the board, and it is pertaining short-term rentals, I'd send it to legislative services
Yes,
or the
right.
development
Yeah.
or development services, because they're actually handling the short-term rentals. So, yeah.
Well-
For acknowledgement and tracking. Yeah.
Okay, so from the perspective of tracking, I think it's, well, first of all, I think that acknowledging things is super important. I really appreciate that we're doing an acknowledgement and then getting back to people with whatever answer they need. And it's a really important opportunity from my perspective to show appreciation and sort of the face of the organization. So I'm wondering on that acknowledgement letter, do we give them do we set out the expectations of what they can hear back about?
No, so we acknowledge that the legislative services staff are not staff experts by any means, depending on the correspondence. We will acknowledge that we have received it and we will circulate it to the board. If there is a if there's operational or a question within that needs the staff expert to respond, we usually CC that staff expert, and an acknowledgement is or further to their answer or their question will be responded to. Then the response of the staff expert responding, legislative services is CC'd to that individual, but also, so then the board sees that the question that came into board, which was operational, was responded to and handled and that it's included on the board information package, so that you can see that it is handled and taken care of. Did that answer? Sorry.
So my question, first of all, is the person who receives the acknowledgement, are they told that if it's an operational matter, staff will be getting back to them within 30 days?
Yes.
So the expectation is set that they will hear back from us within 30 days?
Within 30 days, or the staff expert will respond to them within 30 days. Yes.
Okay, so then my next question is, who tracks making sure stuff gets done by the timeline?
That's a good question. In the sense of we do have a tracking system within Ledge Services where follow-up is needed. I've followed up with other staff and said, hey, where's your response? Can you send that to me? And they said, sorry, we forgot about you. And they send it into Ledge Services, and I ensure that it's circulated to board as accordingly, or the committee for that matter.
Okay, so I think the timelines are really important to meet those. Like that's, if we say that we're doing it, we should make sure we're doing it.
Director Nicholson, one more question, and then we'll turn
I
it.
have one more question.
Okay.
And then it gets back to what you mentioned earlier. I often find I have usually they're operational questions, so I pass the correspondence on to staff and it disappears, and I never know. I never know if it's answered in a timely way or what the answer was, and I think it's really important that if something comes to me, I would like to be CC'd directly on the answer.
Yes. Okay. That's great.
So that's not in the policy, I don't believe.
I don't think it is, but I can definitely find a spot for that.
Thank you.
Online, we'll turn to Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And the most important word that came up there just now, acknowledgement. And I'm going to jump on my soapbox here, because there are departments, and I'm going to single out Ms. Thompson in engineering, who are super at acknowledging and answering just like that. Brilliant stuff. There are other departments I'd love to name which don't. And I've got emails from residents with emails which have sent months ago which haven't been acknowledged. This is one of the most important things that can happen. If a resident sends us something, even if a response is, I have received your message and I acknowledge it, that at least says something. But let's not ignore stuff for weeks and weeks and weeks. So if it goes to a staff member,
Director Wilson, is there a question in this
there
line
will
of,
be a question. I'll get there, I'm sure, and other people go.
because
on
we're
as well.
getting dangerously close
Yes,
to.
let's make sure, please, from Legislative Services that I don't know. Somehow the departments have to start acknowledging one department in particular. No question, leave it at that.
Okay, and our CAO wants to weigh in.
Thank you. Yeah, so Director Wilson, speaking directly to you, you know full well if there's any concern, you're welcome to bring it my way and we will address it immediately. We have a customer service policy and I know I can confirm all staff in the organization are very committed to it. We do have extensive workloads which often lead to delays in response times, but I welcome any feedback you can provide and we will follow up on it immediately. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Miles Wilson. And Director Acton.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. This is kind of the reverse of the correspondence from the public, so I'm wondering if we're ever going to have a conversation around correspondence amongst the board or from staff sending a message, because things, we talked about how our emails can add up, and actually that is often the case. How I can miss someone's email is just I've had too many, and somehow whatever they get pushed somewhere else, pushed down to the bottom. So for example, like I don't need to know what people want for lunch, and I don't need to know who needs a hotel room for a conference, and et cetera, right? You know, I've mentioned this a few times, there hasn't been like any kind of proper email etiquette discussed or policy. I don't know if we need that so much, but the help from staff of recognizing that directors like to just spam everyone's email or some, so that we maybe, when there's a question going out to the board from staff and people don't need to, we don't need to all know what each other's answer is. We could like BCC or hide it so that they'd have to go through to the effort. So that's just one thing. I don't know if in the future we're going to talk about correspondence or communication through email amongst the organization. Maybe that was good enough. I don't know.
I couldn't agree with you more, Director Acton, and perhaps it's an opportunity for a workshop on how we internally communicate with each other. Okay, and our CAO agrees. Did you have a follow-up, Director Acton, or shall I turn to the next speaker?
No, this is great. And I think my community has been really happy with the correspondence and the answers. And if they were going to be upset, they're probably upset with my response times rather than staff's.
Thank you,
thanks.
Director Acton. Director Morrison, please.
Don't touch the button. Thank you. And this is to just reinforce or go a little deeper on a point that was made by the director across the way in regards to the tracking. And I don't want to make more work for our very overworked staff at this point, but it's that email that comes in, it pertains to my area, it may be operational, it may have some policy implications, it's directed to the subject matter expert, and the only time we'll ever hear anything further on that is if the author of the correspondence has got an unsatisfactory response. So I know that we're having successes on a daily basis with our staff interacting with the community, but we still often are caught up with the situation where an individual runs into us in the community and have had or are engaged in correspondence or interaction with our staff, and I haven't got a clue what they're talking about. They might have sent an email 6 weeks ago. So, Ms. Boyd, it's important that when the resolution of the circumstance or the correspondence is, I'd like a CC on that, to know that the resident is getting their question answered and that they have had a positive experience in reaching out and dealing with the organization. Is that going to create a whole bunch of extra work for staff to ensure that we're CC'd on, the last email in the chain?
Ms. Boyd?
Thank you, through the chair, Director Morrison. When we're dealing with board correspondence, it's noted as 7C that Legislative Services is included in it, and we have our tracking system through a colorful email tracking way. But when you send it directly to the staff expert, and I don't want to create more work for Legislative Services either, I'm not sure if there can just be, when you respond to with your expert opinion on this question, can you CC me back? Or it's definitely about communication, right? And so I'm not sure who and who isn't not CCing the director when they forward it through, because that's where it initiated from, and you want to make sure everybody is taken care of and knows that it has been responded to. So I don't know how it could be tracked, but even just stating it here.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Ms. Miles Wilson, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add to the discussion and add potentially further to the answer for the director's question in that oftentimes when an elected official forwards it to staff, it's an operational matter that needs a response. Understandably, the director maybe want to become educated on the issue as well, as it's of interest to their constituents, and so they need that information. And so that's important. What we want to avoid, though, is sometimes there's a dialogue that ensues and there's multiple emails and there's correspondence that goes on for a little bit of time. So we want to make sure that the director's not necessarily roped into that. As Director Acton has said, like, emails can get quite overwhelming. And so I would propose probably the best solution for that is to forward the email to the elected officials so they can see the response, get the benefit of the information, but not have to have that tie to the issue any longer, as there might be a dialogue going on for a little bit of time. So just a suggestion that could be a way that we could accomplish both things.
Thank you, Ms. Miles Wilson. Turning to Ms. Boyd, I think you've picked up certain nuances that some directors have shared. Are you able to incorporate a few revisions into the correspondence policy and provide perhaps an update at the next governance meeting?
I can, yes, yeah.
And turning to the directors, it doesn't seem like there are any further questions on this report. Again, thank you for all your work on a great start on the correspondence. And I'm going to turn to our corporate secretary for the next item, please. What's your point? Oh, Chair.
Just that there's a recommendation. I'd like to move the recommendation.
Moved by, thank you, Director Segal. Moved by Director Segal, seconded by,
Oh, yeah, okay, sorry.
point of order. You were out of order.
Carry on.
Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair. R2 is a recommendation from the CVR board meeting of April 23, 2025. And shall I read the resolution?
Please.
The CVRD Board Resolution 25-200 R3 to refer same-day committee reports to the Governance Committee for discussion with the board procedures bylaw.
Do I have a mover? Director Nicholson.
I don't think this resolution makes any sense. I think it was probably that someone wanted to discuss a policy around when items should go to the same day board and when they should be, wait 2 weeks.
Thank you for that clarity. Yeah, so we won't get into discussing it now. I think, Ms. Boyd, did you pick up on what we're looking for?
Yes, I did. It came out of, I believe, discussion a few board meetings ago. Discussion whether it's policy or not to do same day reports up to board for ratification from a committee. Discussion did ensue in staff, and that if there is something pressing, the board needs approval to do, or staff need the board approval to do, and it's an emergency situation, I'd say, or a deadline, then it would go straight to board. However, if it's coming from committee, the public needs time to digest that information and then, as recommended, to go up to board at that next board meeting. To not have it in a bylaw or a policy, or to have it in it, would restrict, I think. And I think the board would rather, or the committee, have its discretion when it should go up to
Right.
the board for approval.
So I would think the recommendation could be wordsmithed a little better to reflect what you just described. And I'm going to turn to Director Segal, who wants to comment.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm wondering if this is just considered a practice, a good practice, that we don't send committee reports on the same day, or if it should be integrated into our procedures bylaw.
Ms. Miles Wilson would like to weigh in.
Yeah, so in discussing this with the corporate officer, who's not here today, there is an option to do either. So to codify it in the bylaw, or sometimes practice just to have a common understanding and through convention is to just have an agreement of how you would like it to be managed, and then staff will support accordingly. The other option, of course, is to look at policy, which is you can waive. It's not as codified as a bylaw within a procedures bylaw. So there's multiple ways that you can handle this. On the lower end, just a common understanding, then policy, then bylaw.
Thank you, Ms. Miles.
Just a follow-up?
Please.
Just that this came up and, was kind of heated. And there was an assumed convention that I haven't been here long enough to know, what used to be done and what is done now. So I think I'll defer to Director Morrison. He's got his thing on next to talk about that.
Thank you, Director Segal. Director Morrison, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm not one to have visual hallucinations, but I am certain that I have seen a written form of policy, guidance, something in the past that has said that upon reflection from much public input, who don't like it when we send stuff same day, that we developed something in writing that said that we will not send same day committee reports to the board as a general rule, okay? We have, I know that we have, when this policy or practice or whatever I hallucinated was, we've actually waived the policy because of the urgency of a particular item to go to the same day board. So I think that it makes a lot of sense for us to have a written policy that says, out of respect and transparency and all of those things, that a policy be developed that clearly states that same-day ascension to board is not recommended, and that if something of an emergent nature is, the policy can be waived and it can be sent to same-day board. So that's what I'd like to see, and it makes sense, and I think it respects what a lot of community members have told us about the sense of rushing things through when it's not necessary. If it's a urgent grant application or something that is very timely, absolutely. It's a simple thing to waive a policy.
Thank you, Director Morrison. I think that captures the pragmatism that we can demonstrate. So, Ms. Boyd, you'll pick. Oh, yes, of course. Director Estache, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just checking that you can hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Perfect. I would vote against it, that there's a standing, that it goes to the next. As you say, people feel that the comment is that the public feels that they aren't having the opportunity for public engagement. That's exactly what committee meetings are for, is working through the work of engaging the public and having the discussions and having the debates. Just for it to come back to the board and have a whole discussion and a whole debate and everything again, that's what committees are for. We don't need to delay or add any extra layers of bureaucracy, because for those that say things are happening too fast, I would probably venture to say that over half the population is saying we're taking too long on times. Public engagement, that's what the committee is all about, work and getting things done. The board is about the final vote, not just digging up everything again and going through the whole motions of the work again that was done for a committee. So I'm not in fully support of ratifying a policy that says you can't move anything to the afternoon. That's what the committee's for. It's advertised well in advance, and the public has the opportunity to engage at the committee level. Just to do it all over again at the board level slows down the efficiency of government.
Thank you for that point of view. I'm going to turn to Director Douglas.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I tend to agree with the comments from Director Estache, and my suggestion would be that we leave this to the members of the committee of the whole to decide during the meeting if something's urgent enough that it has to be voted on at the board that same day, or if we want another couple weeks to think about it. I do worry about when items come back, and I think we're all guilty of it. It's kind of a natural inclination we all have, is that once you get a couple weeks to really think about something, we often sort of re-debate the issue all over again. And I worry that does slow down our processes and our decision making. But yeah, whether we have a policy in place or not, if we do have an item at committee of the whole and we want that sober second thought and more time to think about it, we have the power as a committee to refer it to the next board meeting 2 weeks from that time. And we've done that in the past as well, including in some with some recent contentious files that have come before us.
Thank you, Director Douglas. And the CAO would like to comment.
Yeah, just as a more of an operational perspective on this, there's a couple of reasons of why a board would potentially want to have 2 weeks. As you mentioned, Director Douglas, it's that opportunity for second sober thought, giving a bit of time and space both for the elected officials to digest the matter, but also the public. But also on the back end, the staff work required to produce very quickly all of the reports onto the next agenda. It's actually efficient for staff to have a bit of time to double check, make sure there's no errors. And so that's another reason of why we don't pull everything onto a board meeting directly after, because they are back to back. So it just adding a little bit of perspective to that. It's a little bit easier for the support staff on the back end.
I like that little bit of clarity, Ms. Miles Wilson. And having watched committees of the whole work in action, and you're right up against that 1 o'clock time frame, I think sometimes it can become too quick for staff to turn around and have something ready for the afternoon. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we're talking 7 days, not 14 days. Something from the committee of the whole would appear on the next week's. So there's about a week. Oh, okay. I've been corrected. And I'm going to turn to my seatmate, Director McGonigal.
Thank you, Chair. And I agree with Director Estache that the committee does the heavy work, but the board has the final decision. So with a policy, and if there is imperative need to bring one to that board's meeting, that would be the idea to waive the policy. We all understand that it's human nature to rehash whatever you're passionate about, But if we can, as a group, agree that the committee is where the hard work does and where that debate is, the chair should have the authority to break that debate off at a future board meeting. So let's do the heavy work in committee, waive the policy when necessary, and make the decisions at board.
Thank you, Director McGonigal. Director Morrison, please.
Well, I'm trying to help us get to a place where we can perhaps have a policy developed and return to committee for consideration. So I turn to our staff and ask, I would move that as same day policy be developed and report back to committee of the whole, board. I guess it would be this committee. And if there's a seconder, I would speak to it very briefly.
It's seconded by Director Skal.
And I just note that, yes, there's a lot of things that we as directors need to do. We need to not be rehashing items at the board and the likes, but this initiative, not only is it helpful to staff to be able to produce clear, concise agendas in a timely fashion without the rush of having to send it to the same day board, but this has been something that has been driven by community members who've got up to this lectern many times saying how much they dislike us moving things from committee of the whole to the board on the same day. I urge you to support this policy being developed. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Morrison. Director Acton.
Thank you. So it's not called a policy, I guess, but this was a practice, and it was actually, we discussed it and voted on it, and it became part of the way we did business. And it happened because often committee work is the work of the board, or it's a working group, and decisions get made that are unexpected. And that was really the really tough ones, and they turned a different direction. And it gives the and 2 hours doesn't actually give people the opportunity to respond. People can't, even if they're watching it or listening to it from work, they can't turn it around, show up here. That's their only option. They can't even get a letter to the whole board officially. So that's where it came from. So it was always in practice, and then and it was a directive from the board. So it shouldn't have died off. It died off, I guess, just from a lot of changeover at the table and in staff. If it has died off, I didn't actually realize it had died off until we started debating it. And I think it's really important that so what we would do is, with that item, if it was urgent, then that would be part of the resolution, that it would go to that day's board. So it wasn't really debated. It was just known that, okay, this is urgent, and the decision needs to be made, and we do it. We don't purposely try and delay things here. And anyway, so that's just my comments, and I would like it to stay in place. It does actually and then it gives you time to rethink it, and the reverse process of making decisions that quickly and then trying to backtrack is not an easy thing to do in the format that we use here. So I would support leaving it how we've always had it, and would support it being in writing.
Thank you, Director Acton. Director Segal. Oh, damn.
Thank you, Chair. I know when you push the wrong button, you just get lost. I'll be supporting this. I really prefer to have things in writing so it's really clear. And what's been hard about this, when this issue came up, is that a number of area directors' memories couldn't be confirmed with an actual policy or a board like it just couldn't be found. And I know staff did a big dig to find the policy or find the resolution, and they couldn't find anything. Excuse me. So I think it's important to get it in writing so we know where we all stand on how we deal with same-day reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Segal. Director Martman.
Thank you, Chair. And I have more of a question around this, because I can see, both sides have merits. But is there a legal aspect that applicants, particularly around land use or perhaps other potential use, would say that they haven't been given due process if we do it the same day. I think particularly going back to Schnitzer's or Radius Recycling and about their need for due process, and wondering if there's some insight there.
I'm not sure. Are you directing the, I guess, the CAO would like to, there we go.
It's a great question, Director Martman. I think the key thing in all the advice we've ever received on our procedures is consistency. So we should, come up with a process that's defensible that we stick to. And that's kind of what we're talking about here today. It's when we lack consistency in the process where landowners, applicants, members of the public don't know what to expect and they don't get clear information on how things are going to proceed. That's what we want to avoid.
Thank you, Ms. Miles Wilson. Director Martman, follow up?
I think that just lends itself to, we need to put something in writing, and I think let's get a draft in place and to see where we go.
Are we ready for the question? All in favor? Against? 2 against, Directors Douglas and Istash. Motion carries. I'll turn to the corporate officer. What's our next item on the agenda, please?
Thank you, Chair. The next R3 is a report from the Legislative Services Division, revised board procedures bylaw. And Ms. Boyd, I believe, is speaking to this.
Ms. Boyd.
I think it's a tag team between CAO Danielle there and I. So this has been back and forth with the governance committee, and we collected all the information at the last meeting to polish it some more. I believe highlighted in red and outlined in the report itself is what has been updated, and I'm here if anyone has any questions or comments.
Looking around the room, there are no hands up yet. Director Martman.
Sorry, forgot to take it down.
Looking around the room, Director Segal.
Thank you, Chair. I had a couple of things I wanted to ask Ms. Boyd about. One is, they're both regarding delegations. But the first one is just understanding, having, again, this common understanding of how we deal with recommendations that may come from a delegation. Sorry, I really got a frog in my throat today. Is this recommended to be a part of the procedures bylaw or a separate delegations policy? I feel like we're really making a lot of work here today at this committee.
Do you want me to help with that?
Sorry, does Ms. Miles Wilson want to answer that, or
I can do that. I can help.
I can't see her there.
Can you see me now?
There we go. Nice to see you.
Yeah, so Okay, so we'll tag team this one, Director Segal. So there has been some discussion as of late regarding actioning delegation requests, and it might be worth a bit of discussion and potentially some direction on how the committee would like to proceed. So regarding delegations, often they come to a committee and or board with an issue. Often they're looking for either an action, potentially funding for their cause, for their organization. And as long as I've been here, which is not that long, it has been somewhat of a standard practice to receive the information, but not necessarily to provide a direct response within the meeting to the delegation request. There definitely is full discretion to request staff come back with a report. So we have had multiple requests in the last year where there has been direction for staff to meet with that organization and come back to committee with a report. That has happened. But standard practice is generally that because you're kind of at a pressure point with the organization and might need a bit more information to consider that, just like we have committee directions or recommendations wait 2 weeks to go to board often. It's the same principle that you need a bit of time to digest the material and get a bit more information. So we don't have that codified anywhere. So it might be worthy of some discussion, and then we can proceed accordingly.
Thank you, Ms. Miles-Wilson. Looking around the room, any more questions from the floor or online? I had two little observations, delving into the weeds. Item 19.5B, I think there might be a typo where at the very last sentence it says 19 in parentheses 2A. I think it should be 19.5A. I'm getting a nod from, and then on item 21, it could be my poor use of English, but under 21.4, has continued beyond that is required versus beyond what is required.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I was looking at.
21.4, parenthesis 4, has continued beyond what is required.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think there is a request for a recommendation that we adopt this policy. Director Morrison.
Don't press the button. Thank you, Chair. Couple of items that I'd like to inquire about, and this is the procedure that we'll follow in all board and committee. They actually are kind of linked. So I would like to ask, apparently we're looking at some new meeting agenda software, and I'm curious about how we can get a live motion onto the monitors when a live motion is on the floor for consideration by the committee or the board. Is there any advice, direction from staff on if and when this might happen? And I have a second question.
I don't see anybody. Oh, Ms. Ferguson.
That is something staff could look into with our new software and get back to you on that for sure.
That would be incredibly helpful. And my next is kind of related, and it's the rationale for having a resolution on the floor. At a recent meeting, I used a Elimina tool in which I posed a question to the chair, where on the agenda are we? And that was Elimina code for we're talking about everything under the sun except for the resolution on the floor. So going back to when I was first sitting on this board, I was given the advice that a director can safely talk about or can safely pose a question, ask for a clarification, and make a comment. We refer to the use of Robert's Rules of Order, but I used this question to the chair of where are we on the agenda, because it's not just me that find myself sitting here wondering where we are on the agenda and what the discussion is about, but I'm now getting feedback from people that are actually watching our meetings who are commenting on very extraneous discussion going on that doesn't pertain to the business that we have published in our agenda. So I'm asking us as colleagues and staff if there is wording that can be put in here that directs us or nudges us towards succinctness to the matter at hand, the matter that's on the floor, as opposed to general speechifying, I guess.
I believe Ms. Ferguson wants to respond.
Yeah, so with our new, through the chair, with our new meeting software, we will have the ability to go through and you'll see live what agenda item you'll be on with your meeting software that'll be on your computers, which will be triggered when the recording clerk clicks on each motion as she goes through. So we can look at how we can integrate that with your computers, but that is software that will be implemented later this year.
And again, I see Ms. Miles Wilson wants to participate. I would just turn to Ms. Miles Wilson before she does and say, is this also part of a board workshop right after how to send and not send emails?
Well, we definitely workshop a number of topics. I'm not sure if there's potentially an option here to add into section, what is this? 19.8, conduct and debate. There's a section that says directors speaking at board meetings must use respectful language and all the standard kind of etiquette. But there's also 8C, which says must speak only in connection with the matter being debated. And so I think that the point is referenced within the document. I also really appreciate the reference to where are we on the agenda, because it's a very respectful way to say, hey, let's get back to focus on the matter at hand. Everyone kind of goes off on tangents sometimes, and we sometimes just need a gentle reminder that we're getting back to the issue, or we should be getting back to the issue. But I think it does reference that in 8C.
Thank you, Ms. Miles Wilson. Director Morrison, your mic is still on. Did you want to follow up? Director Acton.
Thank you, Chair. I've mentioned this before about the number of delegations in a meeting. I personally think that 2 is unrealistic. All delegations, almost all of them that come here need more than 10 minutes, so clearly 10 minutes is not enough. And almost all of our delegations that come here, we are really engaged with, and it's the only time we see them, once a year or whatever, that we have lots of questions and we have great dialogue. So, but having 2 is often like, even just one sometimes will be an hour or let's say half an hour, then you have 2 and there's 2 hours, or an hour or an hour and a bit. And so I have discussed at this table the idea of just having 1. Oh, and the other comment I wanted to make too is that there never seems to be really a lot of urgency with our delegations. So spreading it out more, I don't actually see, if we had, say, 2 that were really urgent, then maybe we would make an exception. Maybe that's at the call of the chair or something, at agenda review. But I would like to see a practice of only 1 delegation. It just kind of, it's kind of like being at the gym. You only have like your first 30 minutes and then you start to get tired. So, the beginning of the meeting we come and that's when we have the most energy and it starts to wane. So I'm not actually going to make a resolution because I haven't actually felt a lot of consensus around this topic. So if someone else wants to make a resolution that we only have 1 delegation at meetings, I would second that.
Are you moving that, Director Segal? And you're seconding it?
Sure, thank you.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing Director Morrison?
Thank you, Chair.
Hold on. And then delegates discussion. Hit the mic.
Oh, thank you. My observation has been that the length of time allotted to delegations is 10, 12, 15 minutes. The length of time that directors pose questions and spin, well, no, I won't say that, but engage with the delegation is what makes them 30 minutes and longer. I think that we've got able chairs that can, nicely thank delegations for arriving and can speak on behalf of the committee or the board. And we should be able to easily have 2 delegations within 30 minutes. And I know that the staff are trying to spread them out and even out the load. I think going to one delegation on a regular basis is going to be a challenge, and I think the challenge should be with us to contain ourselves when we have delegations coming to present information to us. So I won't be supporting the resolution.
Thank you, Director Morrison. Director Segal, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I understand those comments, but I'm going to reflect Director Acton, and just the amount of energy I have for decision-making is finite. Our agendas generally are very heavy, and we have really important decisions we need to contemplate and think about and engage with our colleagues and have healthy debate. And I really want to save my energy for that. Delegations are really important, and I find we kind of have this like a string of no delegations for a long time, and then we'll have a beefy agenda and 2 delegations. And I totally agree, as chairs, we're really working hard to hold the amount of discussion we have around delegations. But I agree that I would like just one delegation so I can really hear from that specific group and be present for it and not feeling like, oh God, I have all this, hours and hours of heavy stuff to go through. So I'll be supporting this.
Thank you, Director Segal. Director McGonigal, please.
Very much, Chair. Once it gets read and through to the director across, that's why I don't go to the gym, so I have a clear mind when I come here. Exercise is also for the mind. I think an easy solution is to reorganize the agenda so the delegations are at the end. When you have done your heavy work, then listen to the delegation. And then you have 2 weeks again to reconsider that unless it's important or pertinent that could be weighed by the policy. I think we are our worst enemies when it comes to the timing. And with 15 thank yous to the same delegation from each of us is not appropriate. The chair should be the one to thank the delegation. If there's clarification questions on the delegation, those are appropriate. But just to thank them 16 times is what causes an hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Director McGonigal. Director Wilson online.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll be supporting this one as well. I'm in the energy levels. I'm not bad on energy levels, but in this particular case, once we have one delegation, which, as Director Acton has pointed out, can go on for an hour or more, then I'm beginning to wane somewhat. So I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Is the chair of this committee allowed to weigh in on this conversation as well? My own, I do not like the optics of us taking something away from the public. And I've heard it said, why aren't we meeting in the evening when it's easier for public to attend these meetings, and we don't? So it's considerably challenging for a delegation to arrive, and for that reason, I think well-managed, as it's been already said, we don't need 16 responses. I think I will vote against this motion. I think 2 is the bare minimum that we should allow. And over to Ms. Miles Wilson.
Yeah, there's a motion on the floor, so just a point of clarification really, is that although we do have an opportunity to put 2 delegations on an agenda, staff are very mindful of the length and of agendas. And so the corporate officer definitely directs delegation requests to meetings where we have enough time and space for them to present. So that is going on in the back end. We have very popular times for requests, usually in and around budget, and so those are other things that we have to manage. So I just wanted to offer that up, that we are trying to manage time as well by directing those delegations.
Thank you for that clarification. Are we ready for the question? Could the corporate officer repeat the motion, please?
So your motion is that it be recommended to the board that the regional board procedure bylaw be amended to include wording that 1 delegation be permitted per meeting.
We ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Opposed would be Istash, Douglas, Deck, Abbott, McGonigal, Morrison. I can't do math and talk at the same time. I think it failed. Are we ready to move on to the staff report recommendation? Ms. Ferguson, do you want, it's a two-part motion recommendation?
All right, the motion before you is that it be recommended to the board that, one, per Section 225 of the Local Government Act and Section 94 of the Community Charter, public notice be given to the board's intention to repeal and substitute CVRD bylaw number 2889, Regional Board Procedures Bylaw, and two, that the CVRD bylaw number 4623, Regional Board Procedures Bylaw 2025, be considered for three readings and adoption.
Moved by Director Segal. Point of order. What's your,
Haven't we just made some changes and we would see it come back with amendments and everything?
thank you, Director Acton. So what's the next step? We just not move, we just ask staff to come back to the next governance with those revisions, which were, I believe, minor in nature.
Yep.
Well,
We could bring it back here for discussion. Yep.
Director Morrison.
Might I suggest that we consider number one separately, and that notification process can be made to get underway, and then we can suggest that the wording as amended, oh no, I guess we do want to have it come back before it goes to the board. So let's separate them and then consider the second one afterwards.
Do I have a motion to move R3 item 1? Moved by Director Segal, seconded by Director Morrison. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we would ask that staff return to the next governance meeting with the revised bylaw number 4623. I don't know if I turn to the corporate officer.
Have a motion that it come back to the next governance committee.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Beeston. All in favor? Oh, Director Segal.
Sorry. Good Lord. Sorry, I'm just concerned about extending the timeline of our governance meetings and our terms of reference that we'd like to get done before the end of the term. So I guess I'm looking to staff, like if these edits can be made and it be forwarded for 3 readings and adoption, is that appropriate? Like, I think these are all really minor edits we've just made today. I don't know that it needs to come back for discussion again.
It's up to the board's purview.
I tend to concur with Director Segal. These were almost typos. Oh, Ms. Boyd would like to participate.
Thank you. Thank you. If I could provide a little direction. It could be that the CVRD bylaw 4623 Regional Board Procedure Bylaw be considered for 3 readings and adoption. That's okay at this committee level. When we bring it up to board, it can go for 1 reading at a time, 2 readings at a time, or 3 readings at a time. If there's any amendments within those readings, we can still do them. That is the purview of the board, and we can come back with the final perfected bylaw for adoption.
How does
The
that?
motion that's on the floor, can I have that reread?
So you're voting on number 2, that CVRD bylaw number 4623, Regional Board Procedures Bylaw 2025, be considered for 3 readings and adoption.
But point of order, I didn't think that's the motion that was made, right?
We voted on item 1.
We voted on item 1, but then I thought Director Morrison moved that it come back here for discussion.
At the next governance. So you would have to,
Resolution with the seconder's concurrence, and then we can just vote on number 2.
Is that the right way? That's how we do it? I'd second that.
I think Ms. Boyd has just told us we can move it forward, the amendments can be made, and we consider the readings at the board. And I'm fine with that.
So the motion's been withdrawn? Yes. Okay. We don't need to vote on a withdrawal motion? No. So
I'd move number 2 as written in the agenda.
moved by Director Segal as amended and seconded by Director Morrison. And I see your hand up, Ms. Boyd. Down.
Sorry about that.
And Director Acton, what's your point?
Either a question or a point of order.
Point or question? What?
Well, I think it's important that it has with amendments in it because it's going to come to the board and then where is it going to say that we've discussed changes and how do we like get that trigger to go looking for them instead of it just being a plain motion?
Thank you, Ms. Miles Wilson.
Sure. So we would intend to clear out the red line version of this document. And so the version that you would see at board would include some specificity, there you go, around the changes made, so which are very few. So it will be reflected that way, whether you want to amend that motion or not. That is exactly what you'll see at the next meeting.
Okay.
Are you comfortable with that, Ms. Director Acton? So are we ready for the question, or ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Ms. Ferguson.
So the next on the agenda is question period, but there is no one in the gallery, so we can move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Director Segal, seconded by, Director Nicholson. All in favor? We're closed. Thank you, staff, for thorough documents. And thank you, fellow directors.